My wife insisted on a divorce in the house. You can't pay for an attorney to challenge me. I responded, "You're correct." She handed me documents in court, only to watch the city's most dreaded high-priced divorce lawyer take a seat beside me. He glanced at her and said, "He doesn't need to pay me. I'm his big brother." My wife, Evelyn, told me last Tuesday that she desired a separation. There was no sorrow in her gaze, no remorse in her tone. It was a statement of triumph. We were seated in the living room of the house we had invested 8 years transforming into a residence, and she was addressing me with the aloof decisiveness of a business terminator. "It's finished, Tom," she declared, setting a dossier on the coffee table. "I've already consulted an attorney. These are my conditions." I didn't flip open the dossier. I didn't need to. She was eager to outline her requirements. She desired the house that my grandfather had assisted me in making the initial payment for. She desired 70% of our joint funds. She desired alimony for at least 5 years. It wasn't a discussion. It was an absolute capitulation. When she completed, she reclined, a self-satisfied, assured grin on her face. "And I don't wish to battle over this, Tom," she said, her tone laced with patronizing sympathy. "Let's be practical. You're a high school woodworking instructor. You earn a respectable salary, but you can't fund a genuine attorney. My expert will overwhelm you with court costs before you even enter the chamber. It's wiser for you to simply consent to the conditions and depart." I just remained there, staring at this woman I had cherished, this woman I had constructed an existence with, and I sensed a deep chill envelop me. She didn't merely want to abandon me. She wanted to destroy me. She viewed me as feeble, as a barrier to be smashed and thrown away. Her primary tool, she believed, was my incapacity to resist. I allowed the quiet to linger for a prolonged moment. Then I met her eyes, my expression one of defeat, and I uttered the 2 words she anticipated hearing. "You're correct." The ease on her face was instant. She had prevailed. The modest, straightforward instructor wasn't going to resist. She rose, adjusted her skirt, and said, "Good. I'm pleased you're being reasonable about this. You'll receive the formal documents next week." Then she exited the room. Here's what Evelyn understood. She understood I was a man of modest resources. She understood I didn't possess tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a judicial conflict. She also understood that I had a brother, an elder brother named Marcus. What she also understood, and what she was relying on, was that Marcus and I hadn't communicated in 5 years. Marcus isn't an instructor. Marcus is a predator. He is, without hyperbole, the most intimidating and costly divorce lawyer in the state. He's a judicial hunter whose name makes fellow attorneys uneasy. And he was, for all practical purposes, no longer involved in my life. We had a rift after our parents passed away. It was regarding the family residence, the house we were raised in. I wanted to retain it, to maintain it as a remembrance, a spot for our relatives to convene. I'm emotional like that. Marcus, always the realist, viewed it as a non-liquid investment. He wanted to liquidate it, split the proceeds, and proceed. We had a harsh, awful dispute that concluded with us on opposing sides of a chasm of unyielding ego. We hadn't communicated since. Evelyn had observed the end of that conflict. She saw me as entirely and irrevocably cut off from the sole influential individual in my family. In her tactical assessment, my most significant potential resource was a non-existent one. She was mistaken. For 3 days. Following her declaration, I was in a bleak state. She was accurate about one aspect. I couldn't afford to oppose her, not under her rules. The idea of forfeiting my residence, my funds, everything I had labored for, was overwhelming. On the 4th day, I reached the lowest point. And from there was only ascent. I ingested every bit of my ego, an ego that had deprived me of my brother for 5 years, and I located his personal mobile number. My hand trembled as I called. I anticipated voicemail or a response from a curt assistant. But after 2 rings, a known deep voice replied. "Hello?" "Marcus," I said, my own voice seeming frail and unfamiliar in my ears. "It's Tom." There was an extended pause. For a second, I thought he would disconnect. "Tommy?" he eventually said, the childhood nickname sounding odd after so many years. "What's the matter?" And it all spilled out. I revealed everything. I described Evelyn's requirements, her attorney, her iciness. And I described her ultimate, haughty insult. "You can't pay for an attorney to challenge me." Another prolonged, weighty silence extended between us. When he finally spoke, his voice had altered. The astonishment was absent, substituted by something I hadn't detected in years. It was the tone of a safeguarding elder brother. It was the tone of iron. "She said, what?" he inquired, his voice perilously soft. I restated her words. "Okay," he said. "When and where is the initial court session?" "Next Tuesday at the Central Courthouse," I informed him. "I'll adjust my agenda," he said. "Don't converse with her. Don't converse with her attorney. Don't endorse anything. Just appear on Tuesday. I'll rendezvous there." We ended the call. I remained there, my pulse racing with a blend of fear and a frightening optimism. Evelyn believed she had neutralized me. She had no clue she had just provided me a devastating weapon. She was about to discover a severe lesson about what kinship truly signifies. Update 1. The morning of the initial hearing was a dreary, drizzly Tuesday. It seemed fitting. I entered the courthouse solo, sensing every aspect of the vanquished man Evelyn anticipated me to be. I was dressed in my finest and soul suit, the one I typically save for nuptials and burials. It seemed like a combination of both. I stepped into the assigned chamber. It was a barren, detached space that reeked of aged documents and unease. Evelyn was already present, seated at the claimant's table. She appeared stunning. She was clad in a crisp, deep blue authority suit, her hair impeccably arranged. She appeared assured, arrogant, and prepared for a business conquest. Beside her sat her attorney, a man in his 50s with a perpetually content smirk on his face. They were chuckling softly together as I arrived. She spotted me, and her grin wavered for a moment, substituted by a glance of compassion. She likely expected me to appear more shattered. I simply held her stare, my face neutral, and proceeded to the respondent's table. I took a seat, set my worn briefcase on the table, and awaited. Her attorney rose and strolled over. "Mr. Miller," he said, his tone seeping disdain. "I'm pleased to see you're present. I assume you've reviewed my client's extremely charitable offer. If you're ready to endorse today, we can conclude this swiftly and without pain." "I'm awaiting my advisor," I said softly. He genuinely laughed. "Your advisor? Best wishes with that. Let's not prolong this." He returned to his table. The court officer summoned the session to begin. The judge, a severe-appearing woman, arrived and assumed her position. She glanced at the schedule. "Miller versus Miller," she declared. "Are both sides present and represented?" Evelyn's attorney rose. "Yes, Your Honor." "Alan Davis representing the claimant, Mrs. Evelyn Miller." The judge turned to me. "And the respondent?" Before I could reply, the massive doors at the rear of the chamber opened with a loud bang. Every person in the room pivoted. Striding down the walkway was my brother, Marcus Sterling. He wasn't merely wearing a suit. He was wearing a suit of defense, custom-made from what appeared like woven darkness and sheer menace. He advanced with the stalking elegance of a leopard, his costly leather case dangling at his side. A surge of murmurs spread through the chamber as other attorneys and staff identified him. His fame went before him. He didn't glance at anyone else. His focus was locked on me. He proceeded straight to my table, placed a hand on my shoulder, and pressed it lightly. Then he settled beside me, setting his polished case on the table with a firm, conclusive thud. The noise resonated in the hushed space. I glanced at Evelyn. Her arrogant look had been erased from her face. It was substituted by a facade of complete, shocked incredulity. Her mouth was agape. Her eyes were broadened. She appeared as if she had just witnessed a specter enter and occupy the opposite table. Her attorney appeared even more distressed. The hue had faded from his face, and his grin was vanished, substituted by a look of absolute, undiluted fear. He knew precisely who my brother was. Marcus bent toward me, disregarding the remainder of the space. "Apologies for the tardiness, little brother," he murmured, a trace of a grin on his lips. Congestion was awful. Then he sat upright, his attitude all professional. He gazed directly at the judge. "Marcus Sterling, Your Honor," he said, his voice a dominant bass that occupied the space. "Representing the respondent, Mr. Thomas Miller." The judge's brows rose sharply. She recognized the name. Everyone did. Then Marcus shifted his stare gradually, purposefully toward Evelyn. He observed her, then her frightened attorney, and he offered them a chilly, hunting grin. "My regrets for the holdup," he said, his tone laced with false courtesy. Then he gazed at Evelyn once more and uttered the phrase that demolished her whole existence. "He doesn't need to pay me. I'm his big brother." The contest had just shifted. Evelyn believed she was arriving for a capitulation. She had just entered a trap. Marcus unlocked his case, extracted a hefty pile of documents, and the destruction commenced. He promptly dismissed all of her original requirements, labeled them exploitative and submitted in malice, and declared our plan to submit a counterclaim. He stated we would pursue a complete financial examination of all marital properties and expenses for the past 3 years, and that we would require Evelyn to cover all of Tom's judicial costs. Evelyn's attorney just remained there, faltering. He was a small fish who had just been trapped by a massive predator. The conflict was concluded before it even started. Update 2. The 2 months after that initial court session were a judicial onslaught. My brother Marcus does not handle matters partially. He doesn't merely engage in law, he conducts warfare. Evelyn and her attorney believed they were going to overpower me. Instead, they discovered themselves enduring a persistent, organized attack. The initial action Marcus took was to submit a request for disclosure that was, by all reports, a masterpiece of dread. It wasn't an appeal. It was a requirement for every financial record Evelyn had handled for the last 5 years. Bank records, charge card invoices, employment reimbursements, payment app transfers, everything. Her attorney submitted a request to discard it as excessively wide and tormenting. The judge, who was evidently daunted by my brother's fame, examined Marcus's reasoning and granted our request entirely. Evelyn was required by law to provide everything. She believed she was smart, that she had concealed her path. She had no idea she was facing a man who hired a group of financial investigators for amusement. While Evelyn was overwhelmed in documents, Marcus targeted her individually. He arranged a sequence of sworn statements, not just with her, but with her nearest companions, her relatives, and even some of her co-workers. His approach was straightforward. Exert force from every direction until the facts were extracted. The turning point occurred during the sworn statement of Evelyn's closest companion, a woman named Chloe. Chloe was intensely devoted to Evelyn, but she was no rival for my brother. He was courteous, appealing, and completely merciless. For 3 hours, he queried her about Evelyn's purchasing patterns, her business travels, her overall contentment in our union. Then he posed the query that unlocked the matter. "Ms. Albright," he said, "can you inform me about Mr. David Kincaid?" I observed Chloe recoil. The name was unknown to me. Marcus simply paused. Chloe attempted to feign ignorance, but Marcus presented a bundle of charge card records from a card I was unaware Evelyn possessed. A card connected to our shared funds account, an account she had been draining for over a year. He indicated a series of expenses. A lodging in the Vineyard region. Ornaments from a luxury store. Costly meals for 2. Ms. Miller was at a professional gathering on these dates, Marcus said. But her company has verified no such gathering occurred. You were not accompanying her. So, I inquire again. Who is David Kincaid? Chloe shattered. Under the risk of false testimony, she confessed it. David Kincaid was the man Evelyn had been involved with romantically for the past 18 months. He was an affluent property developer she had encountered via her previous employment. It all connected. The concealment. The monetary requirements. The assurance. She wasn't merely departing me. She was departing me for another. She was attempting to plunder our union for resources to carry into her new, improved existence. Her scheme was to utilize my funds to finance her forthcoming with her paramour. The sworn statement of her paramour, David, was even more revealing. He was a conceited, overbearing man. But his conceit collapsed under Marcus's unyielding interrogation. He confessed to the involvement. He confessed that he and Evelyn had orchestrated the separation jointly. He even confessed that it was his suggestion for her to require the house in alimony, assuring her that I would be too impoverished and too frail to oppose. They had misjudged me. They had misjudged my kinship. With these sworn statements, Evelyn's position was not just diminished. It was obliterated. She had committed false swearing in her original submissions by asserting she was a devoted spouse. She had concealed resources and union funds. She was a deceiver and a cheat. Her attorney contacted Marcus, pleading to resolve. He said Evelyn was prepared to abandon all her requirements and simply depart. Marcus's response was icy. No, he said. Departing is an advantage she has not merited. We are not resolving. We are proceeding to trial and we are going to ruin her completely. She desired a conflict. Now she possesses one. Final update. It has been 6 months since I initially entered that chamber. A man who believed he had forfeited everything. Today, I can inform you that I was incorrect. I didn't forfeit anything that genuinely counted. I regained it all. The ultimate court date was a mere procedure. Confronted with the pile of proof against her, the sworn statements, the financial investigation reports, the evidence of her involvement and her plot to commit deception, Evelyn had no option but to yield entirely. Her attorney, appearing weary and completely overcome, counseled her to agree to any conditions we proposed. And the conditions my brother composed were severe. Evelyn didn't merely depart with nothing. She departed with worse than nothing. She was compelled to abandon any rights to the house. Her requirement for alimony was rejected permanently. And because Marcus could demonstrate that she had expended over $60,000 of union resources on her involvement, on lodgings, presents and trips with her paramour, the judge mandated that some be subtracted from her portion of our funds and restored to me. She exited the union with a tiny portion of her initial requirement, a heap of her personal judicial expenses and the open disgrace of having her whole dirty plot exposed in a legal setting. The consequences in her private life were equally ruinous. Her paramour, David Kincaid, confronted with the judicial and societal repercussions of his deeds, abandoned her nearly right away. He was a man drawn to a victor and Evelyn had just endured a dramatic open loss. Her companions, many of whom had been required to witness about her deceptions under vow, separated from her. She forfeited her residence, her funds, her paramour and her standing, all in one swift motion. All because she misjudged the reserved man she was wed to. But the true narrative, the most vital element of this entire period, is what transpired with my brother. A few weeks after the separation was completed, Marcus phoned me. Rendezvous at the former house, he said. I traveled to our parents' residence, the house that had been the origin of our foolish 5-year dispute. I discovered him on the veranda, just seated on the stairs. We didn't discuss the matter. We didn't discuss Evelyn. We discussed our father's awful angling outings, our mother's incredible fruit dessert. We discussed being youngsters. Finally, after an extended quiet, he turned to me. I was mistaken, Tommy, he said. I was so concentrated on the finances, on the investment, that I overlooked what this spot was. It's our residence. I was mistaken too, I confessed. I was so fixed in the history, I wasn't open to seeing that perhaps there was an alternate tomorrow for this spot. We didn't liquidate the house. We chose to retain it, jointly. We've passed the last few weekends there repairing it. We're mending the veranda, coating the walls, restoring it to vitality. It's not a tribute to the history anymore. It's an endeavor for our tomorrow. A spot for our kinship, the genuine one, to assemble. Laboring alongside. My brother, instruments in grip, has mended a injury I believed would be a mark eternally. Evelyn's final barb to me was that I couldn't pay for an attorney. Her avarice, her conceit, her conviction that I was feeble and solitary. That was the exact thing that compelled me to place the call that returned my brother to my life. She believed she was separating me. Instead, she reconnected me with the most crucial kinship I possess. She attempted to leave me with nothing. But as I remain here today, with my residence protected and my brother at my side, I understand I have everything.